the roll call, please?
Mr. Becker?
Here.
Mr. Adam Dot?
Here.
Mr. Jeff Dot?
Here.
Ms. Goodman? Ms. Kaminsky? Here. Mr. Picardi?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here. So I have a question. Since we do have a guest presentation, I'd like to move that to the first item, even though procedurally we should get election done. I don't think they need to sit through us electing our new officers for the year. So if no one minds, we'll do that first, and then we will continue with the rest of the agenda as proposed. Okay? So with that, I will turn it over to our guests. I doubt you have anything to present, so I don't think you'll need to share, but if you need something, let me know, and I can do that as moderator on the Zoom. But otherwise, I'll turn it over to you, Matt.
Oh, no, I don't have any.
So I had a conversation with Matt last week, kind of preparing for this and just kind of talking through how things have been going. He shared a lot of insight, and in that discussion, there was, it's a line I've been using a lot the last couple weeks, and probably after this meeting I won't use it again because I think everyone will have heard me say it at least once, if not multiple times. But in thinking about how Contour has been operating and performing here, I'm just drawn to a line out of A Tale of Two Cities, the first line of the book. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times. To the best of times, 95% of the time, this is the best service we've had here, potentially ever. And to that point, and we'll get into some of these details later in some of the reports, but in December, Contour did 1,463 passengers total, which is just 9 passengers shy of an all-time record for December. So they were 9 passengers short of our 2011 Frontier number, which is really remarkable given how well things have transitioned in regards to that particular metric. That was a 91% increase over Cape Air's December of previous year, and that Cape Air number was our second best December. Now this is our second best December. So that gap between everything else in history and now what we are at right now is remarkable. So many things are working very, very well. However, the other 5% of the time when things aren't on time, when there are extended delays, cancellations, et cetera, we've also received a lot of negative comments. There's a lot of chatter in the social media avenues of the community. And so that's kind of the backdrop of a lot of the information you're going to be getting either from Matt or from some of my reports later on. But you know, it's that balance of things are really going very well, except when they don't. So with that as kind of an introduction, now I'll turn it over to you, Matt.
Sure. Well, you know, Barry, you know, I was asked to attend, and I'm here. I'm happy to answer any questions that any members of the board have. I wasn't aware of a specific agenda other than to make myself available for questions, and but I'm happy to answer anything on anyone's mind.
You want to start, Adam? I know you were kind of instrumental in suggesting that we invite Matt to this meeting, so, and I know you've reached out to him in the past already, so.
Sure. Matt, thank you for joining us today. I think this and doing this quarterly or more often if needed is a great practice, and I think it demonstrates Contour's commitment to customer service and accountability here, meeting with our board. I've reached out to you, and you've offered explanations on the information boards down at O'Hare not being current and not having accurate information. Our passenger counts are up, record setting, but the downside is when those boards aren't up, they're getting seen by a lot of people. And so and myself included, I fly at least a few times a month, and it's been an issue that I think is still not rectified. So I think what would be most efficient is if we went around the table with any board members, and they had questions, and we just identified, is there an issue? No need to repeat the same issue twice. Put it on Contour's radar. And then I think what is real important is that we set a timeline to remedy the issue. With thousands of people going through here, the longer issues remain unaddressed, even though we may be working on them the best we can, the more difficult it is to recover from that. So, information boards are my point.
Sure. If I could interject, I passed through Chicago on Thursday, and I walked to the various gates that we were operating from, and all of our flights were listed. All of the departure times were current. Again, I know that you experienced an issue, but I was just in Chicago on Thursday, and everything appeared to be working as it should.
Great, we'll consider it fixed, and I'll let you know if it's an issue or if I hear of it. Personnel and staffing, can you bring the board up to date on where we are on how many open positions you have, what those open positions are, and when you expect them to be filled?
And we also
Sure.
have in the room Devin and Angela, who are the station manager and regional manager, who might actually have more current information than Matt does. Although I know Matt knows pretty much everything that's going on, so he can probably answer it as good as anybody.
Manistee is planned for 8 positions, and so 5 of the positions, including the station manager and crew chief, have been filled. What remains open is 1 full-time position and 2 part-time positions of just standard line agents.
Okay, so maintenance is filled and all the other positions are filled, there's nothing open?
Yes, actually, I wasn't even including maintenance in the 8, so including the mechanic, it's 9 positions, and the mechanic position is and has been staffed for a little while now.
Okay, so 2 line agent positions remain open, that's all?
2 part-time, 1 full-time line agent.
Okay, and when do you anticipate, based on resumes that are turned in, that we're up to full capacity?
I'd have to defer to Angela and Devin on that, given that they would be the ones conducting the interviews and reviewing resumes.
Okay.
We're going through the resume process now, but in a couple of interviews set up towards the end of this week on this position.
Okay, great. Would you be willing to come back to our next meeting in February and report back on that status, Devin? Okay, great. Thank you.
One thing I'll add to that is, fortunately now, for the next 7 weeks, we've got a reduced schedule as we're in our winter schedule with only 1 flight a day. So that relaxes the demand for staffing and kind of gives a good window to finish these hiring processes when we ramp back up in March.
Okay. Matt, I don't know that you're the right person, but since this is an opportunity for all the board members to address points, I'm going to throw this on the table. We have a office for your staff up front, And to my knowledge, never before have the blinds been shut on it. We've requested, I believe, that they be open so that, folks can see when, people walk in through the front door and we have a welcoming atmosphere. You know, I'll make the formal request that they're open, and if anybody has a issue with that, if they can explain to us why they can't be, they always have been.
I can probably answer that for you. We do have what we call SSI in that office, which is, sensitive security information that is posted on walls, emergency things. And so leaving those blinds open leaves that, information subject to viewing to the public. So that's why we keep the blinds closed.
Can we arrange that information so that it's not in view to the public and we figure out some way to get your staff so they can see when people walk in the front door?
I think we're doing a pretty good job of staffing that counter currently. And we have very limited space in the office, so, you know, we can do what we can to try and move some of that, but I still don't know that we can open those blinds for you.
Maybe we can work on that with you when Matt's off the phone. Okay, thank you. You want to go around the table here with others?
Anyone else have any questions for
Hey,
Matt?
Hey, Matt, Dylan Walker here. Thanks for being on the call. I just, you know, in my passing through the community, I'm hearing some comments that customer service hasn't been real helpful, and customers aren't feeling like they're being heard when they've got significant delays or cancellations. Is that something that you're hearing at your level? And can you maybe speak a little bit more about how the customer service system works with Contour?
Sure. Well, again, to borrow from Barry, with his best of times, worst of times remark, listen, the plus side of being so deeply connected to American and being, you know, the sole carrier that they are willing to handle has afforded us 3 gates in Chicago and the ability to run, you know, what I think is an optimized and ideal schedule for you guys. That comes with American handling our flights, which, again, you would think is a good thing, given what we would hope to be the professionalism of the American employees. The downside to that is we at Contour do not have a way of communicating with the individual gate agents at O'Hare. We don't have a line of communication to the gate agent working gate K2's flight to Manistee. Our sole point of communication is the operations tower, who then disseminates information to the appropriate gate agents. I am aware of numerous instances where our dispatch, our SOC, has communicated information to the AA operations tower that for whatever reason is not making it to the AA gate agents. So yes, it is something that I'm aware of, and I think that the way to combat that is an increased presence of Contour's own people in Chicago. We have a full-time station manager there, but that doesn't provide 7-day-a-week coverage. So I've authorized a second body in Chicago that will be a Contour direct employee to provide 7-day-a-week coverage while we have flights departing. But yes, I am aware that oftentimes the AA agents are ill-equipped or ill-informed to provide the most relevant and timely information to the passengers. We've done one other thing with that regard. We provided training to the AA agents as it relates to rebooking and things like that, that quite frankly, because AA is a unionized environment and it's not like we have a pool of the same 20 employees working our flights all the time, it's actually a pool of hundreds of employees, which at any given time, it may have been weeks since they worked, you know, a Contour flight, and we operate on a different system than American. So that the lack of familiarity with the system and the lack of repetition has presented some issues in the sense that there is functionality that the AA agents were trained on and should be equipped to utilize, that they're simply saying, we don't know how to do that, you'll have to call Contour. So we have had 2 agents in Chicago. I know Brianna was there, and who else, Angela? Was it Sean?
There, Sean has popped in and out, I've popped in and out, so, yeah.
I know Brianna's been there a ton, but basically we've been running remedial training classes with the AA employees to try to keep to try to provide a forum for them to, again, immerse themselves in our system, get familiar again with it, really, because the training, how long was the training provided to each agent initially, Angela?
The Chicago agent?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, initially, that was probably a solid week of training, and then support behind that, with TDY assist as needed. Yeah. But it's also,
Yeah.
we train trainers, and their trainers are the ones that would be supporting continuing training to their team.
Well, that's how it's supposed to work, but given the flaws that we saw in that approach, that's why we have sent our own people back in. But yes, I mean, Angela's right. The way that the training is typically conducted, and this is standard throughout the airline industry, is train the trainer. But we've
Matt?
obviously felt the need to supplement that.
Matt, this is Karen Goodman. You know, it's what you're describing, of course, is we have many people involved in this system. It doesn't run properly. We can't expect them all to do it. How about we train our customers? Is there something that we can hand out to them when they come here and get their ticket or not ticket? How long?
Boarding pass.
When they check in here, that just a brochure of, you know, basically let them know it doesn't go that easy, and if you run into these problems, people are trained. However, you know, you might have to still contact them. Something like that we can pass out to, because we're not going to get all the AA people, you know, to do it the same way, but we could train our customers.
Well, the way, Karen, it's a great question, and I certainly appreciate where you're coming from. The issue is that for booking sources, when somebody makes a ticket through travel agent through American, they are always going to get referred back to the original booking source for changes. So, for example, if somebody booked a ticket on AA.com, they would need to go back to American for any changes. Now, the exception to that is during irregular operations, when, depending on who the carrier that drove the irregular operation is, we can claim control of the ticket to take care of rebookings. But I actually don't think that's where the majority of the problems have occurred. I think the majority of the problems are not people that can't get rebooked, you know, and are being told we don't know how to rebook you. I think the majority of the issues, as Barry said, listen, our overall operational performance, all things considered, when you remove, you know, weather related, has been pretty good. I mean, not impeccable, but also certainly not something where I think we'd be talking, you know, that there's an operational performance issue. Barry, is that a fair statement?
In general, yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
and
I think
one
the
thing
issue is, sorry,
I was
Barry.
gonna say, one thing I didn't mention kind of an introduction is we're still having, you know, startup issues. I mean, it's a learning process. I mean, winter presents a whole different set of challenges, and, you know, we're largely talking about December is when winter really starts here. So, you know, we kind of learned together through that month, and, you know, now I think in January, you know, we're seeing the fruits of that. Staffing and kind of that issue, that takes time. So I definitely see that, you know, things will improve from where they are. But what percentage of this is, you know, one-time stuff versus what is, you know, more ingrained into how Contour operates, I think that's on our side a little bit unknown, which is, I think, where some of these questions originate from.
Sure. Karen, where I was going with that was, I think the issue is not so much rebooking, it is communication. It is getting updates to the passengers so they know what to do. Once they know what to do in the way of rebooking and whatnot, I actually think that's happening as it should. I think what's not happening is helping people understand, is my flight delayed? Why is it delayed? How likely is it that the flight is going to leave at this updated departure time? Because, you know, one of the things that is very common, I mean, we've had this happen several times in the past few weeks, getting what's called edicts, which is an air traffic control flow time into Chicago, where if the weather doesn't improve, it's likely that that edict changes again and gets delayed. There have been times that, listen, the other thing that I will say is, I think we've had like 2 or 3, probably 2 that I can recall, situations where a bunch of things went wrong as part of the same event. And I think, listen, I don't have the empirical data to show this, but our biggest service failures since we began service in Manistee, I think, have been, I think we've had a couple of instances that have likely driven the largest number of complaints, if that makes sense. Like, yes, you know, have we had individually delayed flights here and there? Sure. But, you know, I can remember the flight where we had a mechanical issue, then an air traffic control delay, then the de-icer broke, then, you know, which, you know, if I think back to being a passenger on that 8 a.m. flight, the maintenance issue was resolved at like 11. Then we got an air traffic control delay until like 2 p.m. Then we started de-icing, and the hose on the de-icer just burst open, meaning that, you know, we couldn't de-ice the airplane. I mean, we were stuck. So there have been things like that, you know, any one of those things going wrong, we probably could have recovered more quickly. All of those things going wrong led to what admittedly is a disaster of an experience for a guest. I mean, imagine, you know, I think those passengers, Angela, were you there that day?
The day last week, yes.
What?
Are you talking about last week? Matt?
No, the day the hose on the de-icer actually burst open. There was like 18 inches of snow on the ground.
Yeah, I was here.
Yeah, I mean, that was I think a mechanical delay, then an air traffic control delay, then de-icing, and then the de-icer broke. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, sir.
I think what I'm hearing, Matt, I think you've answered my question, and I think we should move on. I think we've everyone's aware that those kinds of things are gonna happen, so thanks for those insights. My next question for you was gonna,
Actually, Bill, if
go ahead.
I just want to make sure your original question was clarified, and that is, Matt answered the question from a, set of issues on the Chicago side in general.
Yep.
Are you hearing about customer service issues on the Manistee side as well, or is it
Not-
just limited to Chicago?
It's, I think the customer service issues during the mechanical issues and the weather delays were frustrating customers. And I think that with an increased headcount in Chicago and increased training, that will get better.
Okay. Just want
I
to
guess
make sure that's,
finite, like, to put a pin in it, like, if customers are dissatisfied with their experience with Contour at all, I think that's associated with our airport and Contour, so, I guess, you know, is getting back to the Manistee station the best way to relay those issues? And then if it's a American issue, then maybe Contour can deal with that from an American side, but I just want, because when people fly out of Manistee, they're thinking, I'm flying with Contour, I'm flying out of Manistee. So any trouble along the way is gonna come back to that, and they're gonna go somewhere else if they're dissatisfied. So, if you guys are both able to handle those customer service issues, and all of our customers know that they can get back to Station Manistee and their problems will be at least discussed, you know, there's some things we can't do, I get that. That's what I wanna know.
But customer service 101 is be there, be apologetic. You might not be able to fix it, it might happen, but I'm
Yep.
sorry you experienced that. And if we can be there when they come in to say, we heard you had a bad flight, we heard this was a terrible situation, we're really sorry that happened. I mean, anything we can do to just say, we know it was a problem, as customer service 101.
Yep.
Circling back to Barry's comment, though, I haven't heard complaints on the Manistee side. You know, I'm very aware of the issues in Chicago, but I have not heard of our own people on the ground in Manistee being incapable or unwilling to
I want to
remedy
be clear, Matt,
any
I
service.
haven't either.
Okay, I
I
think it's good to
We're good.
isolate the problem. I haven't heard of anything on the Manistee side.
It is, I have heard, it is the thing of customer service when they come back. Just acknowledge that they've gone through a rough situation, instead of just letting them walk through the airport and leave. It's just, we need to be attentive to that. And that's what, you know, that's what they're saying, it's like, nobody even cared. I mean, that's how they feel.
I'm
Karen,
good.
can I ask, like, in your mind, is it stepping on board the aircraft and making an announcement, welcome to Manistee? How can we best accomplish that? I mean, when the aircraft gets, and I just bring this up in the context of like the operation. When an airplane pulls in, you know, we immediately get to work hooking the mobile boarding ramp up, somebody's in the back, you know, unloading bags so the valet bags can come off. So the second the door opens, passengers can, you know, retrieve their valet bags and continue, you know, on through the terminal to the parking lot if they didn't check a bag. So I just want to understand what you see as the right way to accomplish that without, quite frankly, making people even angrier by keeping them on the airplane and delaying them from exiting because, you know, the ground staff is working on the arrival.
Is it something as simple as welcome to Manistee? We're sorry your arrival was delayed, but we hope you'll choose Contour and Manistee again. Thank you.
Just have a greeter
Period.
at the door, you know, when they come in the door.
Well, or on the airplane when they're all seated.
Well,
Put that
that's what
over
I
the
mean.
PA.
As simple as stepping on the airplane and having a member of the ground crew make a welcome to Manistee announcement.
I'd just like to add that typically we do have somebody in that foyer when they come through grabbing their bags, and we do welcome them. We do tell them, like, you know, I personally have done it numerous times here on the Ron and told, you know, I'm sorry for the delay, welcome to Manistee. If you're home, welcome home. If you're visiting, you know, you're in the right place. So we do that. You know, if it's a full flight, we may not hit every single passenger, and that could be that one that might be reaching out to you saying, I didn't hear anything, right? But we do station somebody in that foyer for the most part.
Well, I think, to my point and my suggestion, if you go on the microphone while people are seated on the plane, welcome to Manistee, sorry for the delay, choose us again. It's impossible to miss any passenger because you just said so before they left the plane, and it literally takes 15 seconds.
All right, Matt, this is Jeff Donsko, and I want to get a better understanding. So if there is a delay, and we know that delay is going to be 2, 3, 4 hours, what the passengers here in Manistee had with Cape Air was, if there was a hiccup in the system, they did their darndest to get people rerouted. There was people going to Grand Rapids, there's people going to Traverse City. Those tickets would have been bought through American as well. Is that an option here? Has that been pursued? I don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking the question, because that's where I think some of the communication, and if there is a delay, is there connectivity between Contour and American? So if I'm buying that American ticket and I have that American app, I'm getting a text notification telling me, giving me that heads up that I do have a delay today, and maybe I should seek a different option on travel.
No. Well, let me be specific of it. If you're asking whether a delayed Contour flight is going to show in the American app, the answer is no. Now, if somebody gets the Contour notification via text or via email and realize that they are going to miss their American connection, can they call us or show up at the airport, and can they be rebooked out of Grand Rapids? Absolutely. But American is not going to prompt the misconnection or prompt a rebooking process via the potential for a misconnection. American does not see Contour flight status. They don't see it for any of their interline partners.
I think what Jeff meant is I've heard a number of scenarios where Cape Air, if they had a delay that was gonna create a misconnection for their passenger once they got to Chicago, they would taxi that person to Grand Rapids or Traverse City and get them on another plane. And the question is, would Contour be willing to do the same? Is that?
Well, in a nutshell, I guess basically giving a passenger that options that they may not be getting at the moment. And I don't know the answer to the question, that's why I pose it. And I don't know what the limitations are for Contour to try to achieve that to where you have those options, booking, because, you know, again, Cape Air went above and beyond, and there was plenty of hiccups with Cape Air. I don't want to overpraise or underpraise, but they definitely did their darndest to try to get that customer service satisfaction at a high level, their last 2 years for sure. And I think that's what people have gotten accustomed to, and, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, we have one flight a day, and if that flight is delayed or canceled, you know, your travel plans are pretty much done. That makes for bad customer experience, obviously.
Sure. I think we do have the ability to rebook out of other AA stations. That is not a problem. You know, it's a very different animal, Jeff, when you're dealing with 30 passengers and when you're dealing with no more than 8. I think it's important to keep in mind that not everything that worked for Cape is going to work for Contour. And it is a whole lot easier to manage, you know, 5 or 6 people with a higher level of service. When I say higher level of service, higher level of manual intervention than it is to manage a completely full flight of 30 people. That being said, can we take a more proactive approach at the station level in terms of pulling up impacted passengers? and trying to proactively contact them, sure, you know, we can talk about ways to do that. I think we should be doing that. In fact, I would hope that that's happening regardless and independent of this conversation. But, you know, it's not as easy to say, okay, you know, especially for non-controllables, like, okay, we're going to cancel and bus you guys to Grand Rapids. I don't know, or provide a taxi. You know, in some cases, a taxi might have been able to fit every single passenger on a Cape Air flight. That's not a possibility if we have 20 plus passengers booked. And one of the things that's important is that we be able to treat passengers consistently across the board, not he or she who asks first gets a taxi, and once, you know, the taxis have been consumed, sorry about your luck. So it is, you know, there is room for improvement, but I think we need to be careful to ensure that whatever we do consistently across the board.
I think that's a very fair point, Matt, and, but if I'm a traveler and I know early enough that there's gonna be a problem, and I talk to my gate agent, whoever that may be, whether it's here or Chicago, and I get options, it makes for a better experience. If I wanna drive myself to Traverse City or Grand Rapids to catch that flight and rearrange the entire round trip,
We can do that.
yeah, that's good stuff.
We can do that,
And I
and
have done
we
that
have.
for passengers.
We
I'll
have
give
done
them
that.
options to, like, hey, you know, I don't know what time we're gonna leave, late time, but, you know, I have this flight in Chicago, or I have this flight out of Traverse City or Grand Rapids, you know, there's a couple different options we can do, and we have done that before in the past.
Good.
Okay, but, and you can, if it's a American Airlines ticket, you went on American Airlines and bought a ticket, let's say Manistee to San Diego, whatever it is. If the flight is gonna be, let's say it's mechanical and you know it's gonna be 4 or 5 hours at least, you can get another American and get an all the way through ticket from Traverse or Grand Rapids.
Correct.
And Contour will help, if there's a difference in fee, you know, now I'm booking a day of, will Contour help maintain the cost?
We'll make those arrangements. We exchange your ticket for you, so there is no upsell, upcharge on that ticket.
Yeah, if we have an irregular operation, Adam, and we're rebooking you out of Traverse or Grand Rapids, there is absolutely no fee. That is what an interline is designed to do. It's designed to protect the traveler during irregular operations and lean on the partnership between the two airlines to get people to their destination as quickly as possible. There would never be a fee for rebooking, as there would never be a fee for rebooking.
During IROPS, I just want to clarify that, sorry, irregular operations.
Yes,
If you want to
if
voluntarily
the flight
do
was
that.
delayed or canceled, we have the ability to reprotect at American at no charge.
I guess I'll just add is, you know, when I was talking earlier about, you know, we're all learning and this is kind of still startup period. I think where, you know, what Devin and Angela said is we need to be up to full staff here, and we need all of those people trained well. And the hardest things to train are some of these customer service aspects because they're the most complicated. As people are coming on board, they're focusing first on, you know, basics. What do they need to do for their job? All of these things, I'm firmly convinced, are going to improve as we go through this process. And also, the number of irregular ops will decrease once we get out of winter too, so that also helps.
Can I, Barry, I'm sorry, can
Yeah,
I
go
just say one other thing? I don't, you just brought up a point that I feel important to hammer home here. Guys, never before in the history of Contour's operation, and we've been in the airline business for 7 years, has an EAS contract been awarded 2 weeks prior to the contract start date. And never before has at least in my experience, there have been cases where a contract's been awarded as a renewal where the incumbent carrier is staying on, and so there's really nothing to do. DOT takes their time putting it out, but it's known who's going to be operating. We literally had no idea whether it was going to go our way until 2 weeks prior. And so we would ordinarily allow 90 days from the time of a DOT contract award to start up. And we started on 2 weeks' notice instead with a team of, I mean, we didn't have a single Manistee-based employee on day one of operations. So I just think it's important to remind people of that so that when you ask, well, why aren't we fully staffed 90 days in? Really, this would be the point at which we were opening a station if this had if this had followed a more typical process. So sorry, Barry, but I really thought that was important to remind people of.
Barry, are there any issues that you have that you think the board should know while we have Matt online? Or
I mean, I think the stuff that has been discussed, I think, is important. It's what's kind of floating around in the community. I think we've dealt with what's important, and I'm happy with what I'm hearing, and I'm happy with the people, that are behind me, and that they're doing the best job they can. And again, I firmly believe that we will get issues behind us. It doesn't mean that there's never going to be another issue, but I think the volume of those will go down over time, and everything will start working smoother. So
great.
And I'm, again, I talked with Matt an hour last week, and then at his time today. I'm very convinced that he is focused on addressing issues when he's aware of them.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt. I know you've been very responsive to me and others, so.
No, I'm happy. Hopefully, I've demonstrated over the past 90 days that it wasn't a case of winning the contract and you'd never see me again. I'm here to support all of you. I'm aware of the issues. We're taking steps to address them. And Karen, I think back to something, I said to you when I saw you on the date that we started. My goal is to make sure that you guys all feel like this was most definitely the right choice. And I hope from the passenger counts alone, you're seeing that choosing Contour was indeed the right choice. I think we probably carried more passengers than other airlines might have even had in terms of capacity in the winter months. But I appreciate Barry's words. It will only get better. We're learning the ins and outs of operating in Manistee. Chicago is getting used to running an operation with much higher frequency. It's worth noting on October 1st, our schedule at Chicago doubled. It doubled, not just for Contour, but it doubled for American in terms of them needing to support and handle us. So there's been, and I would go back to, our performance. I pulled up, Barry, I think while we were on the phone, I looked at our operational performance. 82.9% of our flights departed exactly to the minute or early for the report that I pulled up while we were on the phone. I think that was through late November. So I think step one is running a clean operation, making sure our on-time performance is where it needs to be. That will take care of a lot of other issues. It's less critical that we communicate with employees about, with passengers about a delay when we have fewer delays. But your points are all well taken, and I promise you guys that we are aware and working to remedy them to the extent that it's within our control. There are things that we have to lean on American on. There are things that we have to, lean on third parties who we don't control. but I can assure you, we're working on them.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and your team. So do you want to introduce, your, and I forget his role. but I
Sure.
know it's up there.
Sure. So, Ben Munson, joined Contour last week as president. He, has previously been the CEO of a Part 121 airline. He's been a consultant. He runs a consulting firm that he started, that Contour has been a client of for probably 7 years. He's the only person I've ever wanted to run Contour. I have been after him for years, and he finally agreed to join. And so he's on the call, and Ben, I'll give you a second to introduce yourself.
Yeah, Matt, thank you very much for the introduction. Everybody in Manistee, it's so nice to meet all of you virtually for the first time. Hopefully I have a chance to do it in person, and just really appreciate this conversation. Like Matt was saying, getting the operation in a good place is important for us. And I hope that I'll be a little bit extra bandwidth to support the Contour team and being able to do that. And very much would like to take up the offer that was brought up early to just do a regular check-in with you guys, just so that we can check the status of all these items, and that you can feel really confident that all this feedback is heard and that it's being actioned going forward. So maybe Barry, if you're the most appropriate contact for that, I can follow up and we can just make sure that that's something calendared going forward.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that wraps up that part of our agenda. So thank you again, gentlemen. And thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
So, Dylan, I think you need to leave about now?
I need to leave at 1:45.
1:45. Okay. For that one.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, Matt.
So that then takes us to the next part of our agenda, which is election of officers. So we have a lot of open seats since both our chair and vice chair from last year are no longer on the board, so we'll create some. Nope. I mean, you're welcome to stay, but I just assumed you wanted to be here for that.
No, I appreciate the invite, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, thank
I'm
you.
here and there, in and out, if you need me, just reach out. 7 to full time. Thank you.
So with that, I guess we can start with the position of chair of the board. Are there any nominations for that position?
I'll nominate Adam Daunt for chair.
I'll second.
I'll nominate Adam.
So we have a motion for Adam Daunt. I'm assuming, Adam, you would accept that position?
Yes.
Joseph?
Take a roll.
I was gonna say, so, Lindsay, could you do a roll call on that?
Mr. Becker?
Yes. Adam?
Mr. Adam Daunt?
Yes.
Mr. Jeff Daunt?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Picardi?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay, is there, thank you, everyone, I appreciate it. Is there a motion for vice chair?
I'd make a motion for Devin,
Dylan?
or Dylan, sorry.
Yep.
Dylan.
2 L's.
Dylan.
It's exotic.
Thank you. I'll accept.
Great, thank you.
That motion.
Thank you. Clerk?
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Adam Daunt?
Yes.
Mr. Jeff Daunt?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky? Mr. Picardi?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Treasurer, now is this a position that you usually have staff do? Miss Walensky?
I'm pointing, is that impolite?
Stop it, yes.
Okay, then,
Historically, yes, but the board could make it a
Would,
change how they do it.
would you like to do that?
I'd love to. I will
Sure,
nominate Susan Zelinski.
Okay, great. Can I make a second? Great, I'll make a second. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Adam Downs?
Yes.
Mr. Jeff Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Picardi?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Okay, great. Secretary, next position. Do we have a motion for secretary?
I'll make a motion for George Becker.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great, Ms. Kaminsky on the second. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Adam Downs?
Yes.
Mr. Jeff Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Picardi?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, we have our slate of officers now, done quickly, so thank you. Next item on the agenda, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I have 2 additions to the agenda.
Okay?
I'd like to add under new business, boiler repairs and board training.
Great. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Make that motion.
Second it. Clerk, do you have, that amendment recorded, what it's for?
I do.
Okay, great. Motion and second, roll call?
No, you don't need a roll call.
All in favor?
All in favor? Okay.
Aye.
Okay. Do you have anything else on that, Barry? Public comment? Is there anyone online, Barry?
No, not anymore.
Okay, seeing nobody from the public, we'll move on. Appointment of committees. Barry, do you want to,
Do you have
talk about
you have
that?
a list of the current committees, so
Does everybody have a
I
list?
sent it out to everybody,
Okay.
Today, yesterday?
last week.
Oh, wait, maybe I don't.
Okay.
Tell me what email address you want.
We do this every time, Barry.
I know, but
The committees that are already on the agenda?
in general, yes, but all of the appointments are
Okay.
expired, so.
Barry, are there any committees that exist that are not listed on the agenda under committee reports and discussion? Okay. I have a question for you, Barry. Is our bylaw committee gonna meet?
They need to meet. We have outstanding bylaw changes, and our current bylaws conflict with state law.
Okay? When does that need to be completed by?
Sooner rather than later, I would hope.
Okay?
That started last year, and then it got dropped during airline selection time.
You give yourself.
Well, I just didn't know if there was a hard deadline.
There's not a hard deadline.
Okay, so we'll start meeting, with committees regularly. So, should we go around the executive committee? Is that the officers that we,
Generally, chair, vice chair, and secretary.
okay. Should we keep that, as historically,
Generally,
as
chair
historical?
appoints committees, assuming members are willing to volunteer their time.
Okay,
So,
so, with a vice chair of Dylan and George Becker in the secretary role, and Ms. Zelinski, would you all serve on the executive committee?
I don't.
Yes.
Okay. You're welcome to join us if you'd like. Okay. So do we have those committee members recorded? We can go on to the next.
Say it again, who's on executive then?
George Becker, Dylan Walker, and Adam Downs. Okay. Capital Projects Committee. Are there any volunteers for that? I think,
currently, George and Karen were on that. But, yeah, it can be restructured as well.
Okay. You know, I think the Budget Committee and the Capital Projects Committee probably really go hand in hand. So, Karen and George, do you want to stay on capital projects? Okay, great. Dylan, not Dylan, but Preston, I had you in mind to be one of the members that would serve on the Budget Committee. Will you also serve on the Capital Projects Committee?
Yeah.
All right, is that all right with everybody here?
So are you combining those two?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
I'm just saying that our Capital Projects Committee would be Karen, George, and Preston. Okay. Is that resolved? Okay, and, Barry, do I get to sit on all the committees, or do I pick two, or do I need a formal, I would probably have an interest in capital projects.
Because committees are generally 3 people, if you are in addition to that, that's quorum, so.
Fair enough.
We can't,
Okay.
so.
Great.
Basically,
No
need to put
problem.
yourself on the committees you
Yep.
want to be on.
We'll go to the next one, Budget Committee. Okay. Any volunteers on Budget Committee? I'll serve on it.
I was on
I'll
there
volunteer. Okay,
I'll serve on as well.
okay, so Cindy, Adam, and Preston on budget. Is that all right? Okay. All right, great. Bylaws,
I can jump in there.
wonderful. Thanks, Dylan.
Yes, and Karen would
Go
be,
back on it.
Okay, Karen and Dylan, great.
are you gonna have a third, or just?
Anybody else? Okay, how about 2? Good, 2 it is.
Yes, we will.
Okay, next, rental car committee. It was George, Adam, and Cindy. You know, can we make a, whether it's a new committee formally recognized or not, is there an ability to add a,
You wanna add committees? Yeah.
okay, great.
Board can do that anytime.
Well, you know, I talked with George, and I thought it would be real nice. George will know more about maintenance and equipment than I'll forget in my lifetime. And it would be great if George could spend a little time working with you, Barry, on, maintenance and the status and the aging of things here. You know, you just mentioned about the boiler. And just in respect to your time, George, would you mind if we, created a, maintenance and grounds?
Sure.
That you would head up?
Yep.
And, maybe we redirect your hour from rental cars to that? Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. So then, rental cars, why don't Cindy and I, handle that unless somebody else would wanna jump in? I think we've got some progress there.
Okay.
Okay, all right?
Yes, Lisa. Adam, can I just interject for a second?
Sure.
With your maintenance, committee that you just want to form?
Yep.
Could that be rolled into, because I'm certain what you're trying to get out of it is like, what is the age of all the equipment and such, so we have an idea? That would really be part of your capital projects committee, because that's kind of like forming a capital improvement plan, which is all tied to that.
You know, I agree with you, but what my thought, Lisa, is that, capital projects being, expansion of terminal or runway expansion or lighting outside would be different than, maintenance
Well,
and equipment.
what she's talking, I get where she's going, because we talk about this at the county, is that, you know, going out and looking at the maintenance at the current level of operation that our equipment and our facilities have, we want to put together a plan. I was thinking, maintenance oversight and capital improvement would go together, because you have to know what you need.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear our plow trucks, 23 years old, all right, they're gonna be up at the top, because we know those are gonna go. So that will be capital improvement.
Would we have room on that committee? Is there an open slot, or did we already fill it?
George is on that committee already.
George is
George
on
is already
there
on it.
with Karen and Preston.
Okay.
And
Well, that's
I'll agree my comments are is that in general, what we've called capital projects tended to be focused on local capital projects, so the smaller things. And the board generally is involved in multi-million-dollar runway, federally funded capital projects.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's overlap. A plow truck is something that's gonna be federally funded, but we're experiencing the costs of needing something newer because now our maintenance budget is going out of whack. So there's overlap, but I think the need for having a separate committee, really, I think, as Karen and Lisa pointing out, probably can all be done under that existing capital projects.
That's fine. Do we all need to meet as a committee, or can George spend an hour out in the maintenance shed with you and your guy, and he's free to do so at his convenience? And
Well, even as part of that committee, we can just say, you know,
George, go ahead.
George, yeah, you know,
Right.
if
That's-
you could start gathering that and meet with people and get ideas, that's great.
Wonderful, because I didn't want to take up 3 man-hours to do what George can do himself.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, that's wonderful. We're eliminating committees as quick as we're creating them. Rental cars done, transition committee. I'd like to, serve on that. Are there any 2 other volunteers?
I'd like to get on it.
Okay, George.
It's nice to have the executive committee kind of
Oh,
set
yeah.
that up, transition. And you know, it's gonna have to come through you anyways, and set that up, and then you bring those recommendations back to the full board.
Yeah.
Sound good, Dylan?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
I guess
Barry?
the concern I have is that committee was created explicitly with Jeff being on it so that the county's viewpoint was included in
Okay.
that discussion. Given the current makeup of the executive committee, he was on the executive committee until now, so that would be
Great.
my only caution.
Let's keep him around. I know you can't have 4.
You can't have 4, so.
Okay.
Well, do you, I mean,
don't know.
any county
I mean,
commissioner could be in that role, so Karen, it could be you.
What, Dylan, George, what are your thoughts on that?
I can step back, Jeff.
My only concern is when it comes to the budget numbers, I don't need to micromanage anything. It's just a matter of, I'm a conduit, as Karen's a conduit.
Which you'll end up getting a hold of anyway.
In the
So we
transition.
can't, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the transition piece, which is our Barry and moving on and figuring out what we are, might not be as much budgetarily as maintenance and capital improvement.
Well, the transition, what I would recommend is probably the two most important people in the room is gonna be Susan and Lisa. And they can be that conduit as well.
Yeah.
And they don't have a vote here, so to speak, so.
That's a good
I-
point,
are-
very good point.
Well,
I'm
how do the
fine.
2
Keep the
commissioners feel
executive
about it?
committee, and then, you know, as
Lisa
far
has
as.
been attending
Yeah.
all of those meetings, so
Okay.
I just wanted to point out the rationale and why we had created it the way we did last
And
year.
this is a committee that will be sunset hopefully soon as well, so.
Great. Okay, so our transition committee is Dylan, George, and Adam, and we would like, 2 county employees to attend those as well.
Well, Lisa can be, I mean, Susan doesn't need to be there, so if she
Okay.
needs to get brought in, that's another program, so.
Okay, very good.
State those numbers again, I'm sorry.
Transition committee
Mm-hmm.
is, Dylan Walker, George Becker, and Adam Dance.
Thank you.
And
As special guest, Lisa Segala.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Does anyone have any other thought or comment on committees, or are we, resolved? Okay, great, old business, now, Barry?
We skipped
we
some
still need to move, approve minutes here.
minutes and financials.
Oh, how do we get down there? Okay, well then, let's go back up to number 8, approval of minutes. Contour quarterly update, we'll go to number 8, approval of minutes. Anybody have any questions on the minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from last month.
Thank you.
And I will second it.
George, second. Clerk?
Minutes are all in favor.
All in favor?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Treasurer's report.
Just needed to approve the accounts payable, and again, I will be amending these because I got the dollar amount from Barry today and what the contour invoice is going to be, which is $565,600. So I'd also like you to approve these as amended with the contour amount under payment, $565,600. This invoice right here.
I have a question.
Sure. Question?
The date of the invoice is 12/31?
Mhm. That's just when they turned it in, so like it's for all their December activity. But we cannot pay this until we get November's reimbursement back. So October's been paid, so paid and reimbursed. We paid November now, and we're waiting for November's. So once we get November's reimbursement, then I can turn around and pay the $565,600.
That's all okay. Mike,
Yeah.
do we get that in the mail, or do we get it electronically?
You get it electronically. So there were a number of hiccups in this reimbursement process. The biggest being towards the end where DOT sent payment, but it went to the wrong bank account. And got returned to DOT, and it took a while to track down where the issue was. So we were 2 months behind on paying Contour. We're probably now a month behind. So this will get going smoothly. That was our first October payment, was getting it through the system. Now we've got that. November should be much cleaner, and then we can basically get caught up.
Thank you for the background. My only question was, if we've been in possession of it for almost 2 weeks, the invoice? The airport, I'm just asking about.
About a week.
Okay. Is that timely conveyance, or can we get things to the county more quickly?
There's really no reason to get it to the county because they can't pay it for a number of weeks until we get reimbursement for November.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that amount change monthly?
It does.
Yes.
Based on the number of completed flights.
Oh, okay.
So every month it'll be
Yeah, I
different.
noticed it was more last month.
Completed as scheduled or completed?
Completed.
Okay. Thanks.
So it will drop significantly in January and February.
Yep.
Our reduced schedule.
Any questions from anyone?
Do we need a motion to pay that?
We do.
I'll move we pay it.
Accounts payable.
So what you're moving is that the accounts payable for December be approved, and that was amended to include that invoice.
So moved.
And Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Adam Dotz,
Yes.
Mr. Jeff Dotz,
Yes.
Ms. Goodman,
Yes.
Ms. Zielinski,
Yes.
Mr. Picardi,
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
And then you have the financials in front of you that I also just need you to approve the revenue and expenses, and then there's a trial balance. I don't know if anybody had any questions on that.
You comfortable with them?
Oh, I'm very comfortable.
Okay.
And the one thing I'll point out is if you're concerned by the negative numbers at the bottom.
We went through that.
That is
last month.
because Contour hasn't yet been billed / paid their fees, which will wipe out those negative balances.
I went over that last month,
But we've got,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, so we're seeking a motion on that.
I'll make the motion that we accept the revenue and expenses of December.
Support.
Okay, motion,
I do have one.
okay, motion and second, and we'll call the roll, and then we have some additional information.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Adam Dodd?
Yes?
Mr. Jeff Dodds?
Yes.
Ms. Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Manistee? Yes. Mr. P.
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes. Thank you.
So these are the budget amendments that I would like the board to approve, so I can finish out the year. Our audit will be starting here in a couple of weeks. So you can see at the beginning is the year-to-date balance, that first column, and then the second column is the budget. The third column is the adjustments I'd like to make. That fourth column then would be the amended budget after I make those adjustments. And that last column is then where those line items would fall. So really the only thing that's a little out would be the PFAS, which we didn't know what we were gonna get, so we really didn't budget anything for that, which, will be fine. But then it kinda like, all the other lines are within that $1,000 range, so you won't get penalized for any of those. So I would just need the board to approve, so I can go ahead and do those adjustments and make that final amended budget to present to the auditors, the next couple of weeks when we will meet with them.
So there's no change to the bottom line?
No,
It's
there,
all
no,
internal
right, it's all,
among the
it's
line
just moving
items?
the line items, adjusting those line items, yeah. Mhm.
Other than the PFAS, that's the big hit.
Right, yeah, which I can explain to the auditors about that.
So moved.
I second that.
I have a question, just kind of going down the adjustment column.
Mhm.
The largest dollar-wise adjustment is on the repair fees,
Yeah.
32,000.
Mhm.
Do you know why that was?
I don't know. I'd have to do a detailed history on that and find out what that was.
Do they owe us? Is that outstanding? We were budgeting on revenue that we don't have?
We just received more money than what was in the budget, so.
We received less.
The year to date, oh yeah, 259 in the budget, yeah. I'll have to look at that.
Well, I mean, were we counting on that revenue for something? What problems does that create for us?
We ultimately have less fund balance,
Right.
we had less revenue. Bills got paid, so.
Yeah, I can do
And-
a history and see where maybe a month fell.
Well, I'm just curious if we haven't presented a bill to them that we should have, or why it's off budget. I'd like to better understand that.
Oh, I hear you, Susan, say that you'll do a history check
Yeah,
on that. and
I'll
then
do a
let us
history
know
on that, mhm,
Yeah, it's a huge.
Why it's so different.
mhm, yep.
So what problem does it cause if we wait to approve this until we understand what that is?
Nothing,
Okay,
because if it's more, then you'll just be over budget, I mean, it'll come in line, I just won't make that adjustment. No, I'll bring that up at the next.
okay.
So, you still want them to approve?
I do still need them to approve,
Yeah,
yeah.
we have approval and a second. don't we?
Yeah, we have a motion on the floor.
And that could also be maybe something from last year that was missed that got carried over into this fiscal year. Sometimes like the revenue, we didn't get paid till like December or January and I've already closed the books, I can't then do an accrual. So that might be from the previous fiscal year that got carried over or didn't get paid in the timely fashion. So that's why I'll do a history and just Then I'll go into our, accounts, cash receipting, and match all those up with the months and see what's left.
Thank you. Do, if there's nothing else on that. Want to do a roll call, on it, or you have more?
For budget, do a roll call.
Do you have more, Adam?
Well, personally, I would like to know it before I vote, but if that's gonna hold up the process.
From my perspective, I mean, you're making adjustments to reflect the reality of where
Right.
things ended up. And if
Continuously.
we have additional information, we can further adjust that.
But if you don't approve it, can't make the adjustments, amendments, and then our audit starts. Once the audit
I
starts,
understand.
I can't change anything.
Okay, do we call the roll?
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Adam Dotz?
No.
Mr. Jeff Dotz?
Yes.
Goodman?
Yes.
Ms. Kaminsky?
Yes.
Mr. Picardi?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, thanks.
so that took care of the three on the treasurer's report? Great. Okay. Committee reports. Discussion. Executive committee,
Did not meet,
okay.
Capital Projects Committee did not meet, Budget Committee did not meet, Bylaws Committee did not meet, but Car Rental Committee did meet, and there was an update this morning from the Transition Committee study, so I'll talk about just those two.
Okay, thank you. So, where we are with respect to rental cars is Cody Watson reached out to Avis, I believe, and one other, is not Hertz. Hertz had no,
And Fox.
yeah, I don't think he's heard back
No.
from Fox or Avis. He did hear back from Hertz, who expressed no interest in the market. He is working with Stellantis, to come up with, if he goes through Stellantis, now the owner of Chrysler, if he works through them on rental cars, what inventory could he, get? He asked for Greg's numbers. I welcomed, him to reach out directly to Greg if Greg wanted to share those for him. We did provide, him all of the rental car companies that were at the EAS airports around Michigan, and we also, took some of Contour's smallest communities, and showed Cody, that those, with the exception of one, have, national rental cars. So I think where we are there is waiting for Cody to come back with a proposal of what he can do. And, if we can break a log jam locally, to get a response from Fox or Avis, that probably would be helpful.
I guess I would summarize a little bit about what you said is currently Cody is not able to bring a national franchise to the rental car market. And that's one of the things as the committee we've been looking at, because that gives you online booking on national platforms. What he is looking at the logistics of through current ability is an online presence, but a local-only online presence. So, to whatever he would brand, to make an online reservation, but it wouldn't show up in other booking systems.
Priceline, Expedia, third parties.
So it's a step up from where we are, probably with significantly better inventory, but it's not what the committee is hoping to achieve in the market.
That's true at this moment in time,
Yes,
but I,
that's where we stand.
you know, he still could get a return call from Avis or Fox, and then they would be visible on the third parties. And, I was gonna, reach out to those companies as well and see if we could have helped to get Cody a return call.
We also are pursuing, a contact with Enterprise, since the county does have work with Enterprise for our fleet, for primarily the sheriff's department.
Yeah, and they're considered fleet. Who, Barry's been in contact with is Mobility. So, Chris Tyner, who was our contactor, our initial contact with Enterprise, is gonna try to get me a name.
Great.
For someone.
Okay, transition committee. Barry, do you wanna give an update? I saw an email come through.
I had sent that to the whole board, so we were kind of scheduled to meet with Mead and Hunt either this week or next week. Mead and Hunt has requested that that be moved to the end of this month so they can wrap up, all of their interviews and their data analysis. That is moving forward, and I believe we are on the rough timeline that the committee had been working towards Mead and Hunt.
Okay, on a going forward basis, I don't know how often our committees met. To the extent our board members are agreeable who are serving on those committees, and given, everything that's before us, I would like to ask if the committees would meet on a regular standing monthly basis and come back to this meeting, with someone from the committee that, puts a report of 5 minutes or less, unless there's some reason why, it's more deserving, so that we have, a regular report from each of these committees at every single meeting. Are our committee members agreeable to meeting with that sort of frequency? George, is that okay with you?
Mm-hmm.
Dylan?
Yes.
Jeff? Aaron?
Yep.
Preston?
Yes.
Okay, Cindy? Okay.
The one committee, well, I think, I agree with regular. I'm not sure that that needs to be monthly for all committees. Take, for example, the budget committee, that tends to meet seasonally during the budget process. Doesn't mean that shouldn't be quarterly check-ins throughout the year, but there's not a lot to do sometimes of the year on that.
So,
depending on how the executive committee is used, there really is nothing on the executive committee's agenda right now. But that doesn't mean that there couldn't or shouldn't be.
well,
So I think the goal of regular meetings is the right goal, but maybe, they may decide we don't need to meet the next month or 2 months because of what we are working on.
I'd like to ask, the board members, in light of Mead and Hunt's, report coming out to us around, the 29th or 30th, Karen had made the suggestion at a prior meeting about, looking at our strategic plan. We have 2 new board members. I would like to request, if our board members are willing, to do a workshop from maybe 10 till 2 on a Saturday, where we bring in lunch, we spend 4 hours, we go over what our budget issues are, what our strategic plan is, do some goal setting for this year, and then maybe our committees will have a reason to meet every month. So, Cindy, would you be agreeable to doing a workshop, on one Saturday if we brought in lunch?
Sure.
Great. Preston?
Yes.
Only if lunch is served.
Okay, great. Jeff?
As long as I can schedule it, yeah.
Great. Dylan? George?
Yes.
Okay, let's,
Adam?
yeah, can
before
we
you
do that?
Go farther than that, that really segues into the new the new business item that I had added, which is board training.
Okay, wonderful.
So meet and hunt, knowing that we have 2 new board members, knowing that we've lost our chair and vice chair, there's, kind of an information gap potentially. And then even Adam's been on here 1 year and George, I think, 2 years. So 4 of the 7 members are 2 years or less. And there's a lot of acronyms knowledge about airports that it takes a while to come up to speed. Meet and Hunt has recommended that they, later this month, at this 29th or 30th date, come out and provide what they call Airports 101, which is kind of a training generally geared towards new airport managers, but also is available for board members, and they would tailor it to kind of what the board needs to understand. They're looking at like a 2-hour training, just to kind of bring whoever felt the need up to speed on how airports operate, how funding operates, and kind of the big picture stuff. So that's also what they're thinking, and I think that aligns very well with what you're discussing. You're proposing is different, but I don't want to, overwhelm everybody if we're going to have this 2-hour training now and then a 4-hour Saturday 2 weeks after. It may be necessary, but I just want to make sure it's all up on the table as you're discussing.
I think it is similar, but different.
It is definitely different.
And I think
Strategic planning is different.
I think that having the knowledge base and maybe the refresher course and information from Meet and Hunt will help us when we go into the other, meeting. So I see both of them being important.
Can we schedule both?
We can, I just wanted to make sure that all potential uses of your time are out on the table when you're planning
Great.
stuff.
So let's do that right now. Okay.
Yeah.
I would also like to just clarify, when we meet collectively as a group, I think that it'll be important that our committees then meet and make decisions as to how often or when they'll meet and stuff. So we'll bump it to the committees to kind of make those, monthly is ideal. If committee says after this training and this information, maybe bi-monthly, okay, is that all right?
As needed. Okay, so back to scheduling our 2 meetings. One with Meet and Hunt, and the second is a goal setting and visioning and status of where we are and
So
where.
Meet and Hunt is thinking, those are the 2 dates they've proposed, the 29th and or 30th. They could either do it at the beginning of the day, like in 8 o'clock, or at 11, their thought. If they do it at 8, they'll come up here the night before, stay up here, and be ready to start first thing. 11, they'll drive up that morning from Lansing and basically facilitate it. And the idea then would be after that board Airports 101 training, they would then meet with the transition committee to present the basically the study information that they have up to that point. So they would be coming up here to do 2 things. So
Okay.
basically 8 on the 29th, 8 30th, or 11 on the 29th, 11 on the 30th.
January?
January, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Is everybody gonna be in the Airport 101 training, or is that just for Preston and I?
Open to everybody.
Everybody.
Whenever we're scheduling something like this, I doubt that we're gonna get 100% of people to be able to attend, but
Okay, so, group, what's your pleasure, 8 or 11? Does the 30th work for you, Thursday the 30th?
Thursday is fine.
Works for me. Okay, Karen?
Yeah.
Okay. 8 or 11? Got a
8.
day. 8, okay. 8's good. Cindy, is 8 okay with you, Preston? Sounds like a yes. Okay, Karen?
Yeah, I might be a few minutes late, but.
Okay, so 8 AM on the 30th, training.
which would then a transition committee meeting following, so probably around 11. maybe 10, but probably around 11.
Dylan, can you budget that much
Yeah.
time that day, George? Okay.
For the transition committee, if you could just maybe message me at the point where you're almost done with your meeting. We have our auditors coming that week, so I don't know, I don't think I'm gonna be available the whole day.
Coming out of site, so they'll be here.
We'll make it work, Lisa.
Just
Sure.
text me or whatever when
Of
you're
course.
getting to that.
Glad to do it. Can I ask the willingness of the group, back to our goal setting and visioning, our Saturday workshop with lunch, while our training and everything that we learned is, fresh in our mind? How does Friday, the 31st, or Saturday, the 1st of February, work for the group to do that?
I'm out of town.
Okay?
I'm available the weekend after, February 8th.
Okay,
I'll be gone on the eighth.
okay.
Cooking chili on the 15th.
Okay,
2-2?
2-2. That,
I'm out of town 2-2, I gotta back up.
okay, Monday the 3rd, February 3rd.
I'm out of town.
Dylan, when you local?
The week of February 10th. I think we have an airport meeting, right?
Yeah.
We do on the 11th.
On the 10th?
Oh, sorry.
At 11.
Okay, so Dylan, are you telling me that you could do Monday the 10th?
I could do the week of Monday the 10th.
Well, no, I'm asking you about Monday the 10th.
On Monday the 10th, yes.
Okay, good. George?
Fine.
Karen?
Yeah.
Preston?
Yeah.
Cindy?
So do that in lieu of the meeting, you mean?
No, we have a,
Yeah,
We have a meeting, a regular meeting
You have
the
Thursday.
10th, yeah.
You're tentatively scheduled for your transition meeting at 11 too then. And your regular meeting would be at noon, correct?
well, maybe, if we keep noon as a meeting time. I think that's another thing for us to discuss.
Or soon.
Well, let's, I'll tell you what. I know it's a little far into the future, but Barry, at this moment in time, subject to change, other than approving financials, if we nixed our committee reports, do you see any big business items, or do you think we could do a 30-minute business meeting to approve budget and financials and get our monthly meeting done in short order on?
I'm expecting air service grant proposals for final approval, and we should have, state-sponsored contracts for our projects. So there will be a couple additional things. I don't think any of those will be long discussions, or routine approvals.
Okay, well, how about this? Can we set aside Monday, Monday the 10th will be a big airport day. And why do, say it again, I didn't hear.
What time do you want to
Starting at?
Well, let's talk about meeting times. We can table, scheduling, our visioning session. And Barry, can we talk about meeting times right now, or is that out of order?
On the agenda, so.
Great, all right, let's talk about it. Can we move, let's go around the horn here and see if this works for, everybody. If we were to move our meetings to Monday at 9 a.m. instead of noon. George?
For me.
Dylan?
Yes.
Jeff? Karen?
No, for 2 months
Okay,
after that.
Preston?
I would prefer 12,
Cindy?
but I can make 9 work.
Great, thank you. Cindy?
I'd rather do mornings in the middle of the day.
Okay, let's start at 9 a.m. and the question will be, Barry, two questions. One, can you make 9 AM work? Thank you. Karen, do you want us to start at 9 AM in February, or do you want us February, March, should we start at 9 AM in April? What's your pleasure?
Third date in March, actually. I am,
Third Monday.
oh, that would work. I'm done working on 14th.
Good. So you could make the 9 AM on March 17th, eh? Okay.
I'll be cranky.
Well,
And that's different, how?
Is,
My coffee in the morning will be good.
is noon, in February okay? Or, I mean, is your conflict just at 9, or, you know, is it all morning?
Yeah, I have, directors and team meetings at that day, time.
So you can have a nooner in February and then go to 9 AM starting March.
So I was kind of asking,
Yeah.
does noon even work for you, or
Yeah,
are you just not gonna do a little?
No, that'll work.
Okay.
okay.
Could do noon on that day, allocate the whole morning to strategic planning, and then move to a 9 AM March going forward.
I think so, but are you saying, are we doing our strategic planning on February 10th, I thought? Not March?
February 10th.
February 10th, yes.
Right,
So for the February meeting, we could do the business meeting at noon.
yes.
Morning allocated to strategic planning, and then.
Karen can't be here though for it.
Oh, sorry.
So, but what we could do is stay late, right? We could do our business meeting at noon, followed by strategic planning. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, why don't we do that? Is that all right with everyone?
Works.
Okay. February 10th, we're gonna have a board meeting. After, February, starting in March, we'll move the meetings to 9 AM on Mondays. And do we need to publish notice for our strategic planning meeting? Should we say 1:30 PM on February 10th? We wanna
Yep.
set that time?
I would probably actually set it at 1, but.
Even better. Great. Is that all right with everybody here?
Sounds good.
And then those meetings will continue on is it the second or the third Monday?
Third Monday.
Third Monday.
Third Monday.
So we're not changing the date, just the time.
Now, how painful is that for you, Preston?
That's fine.
Good, thank you. One thing that I may suggest to help, Barry and I prepare for our strategic planning meeting coming up on February 10th. If you have questions that would require some information about the airport, whether it's budget-related, equipment-related, you don't have a copy of the strategic plan, we'll only be as productive as we come prepared. So, will you email Barry any questions that you have about, what you would like addressed, and information you need as far in advance as possible, so Barry has ample time to obtain that? Excellent. Okay, thank you. So, now are we at 9, old business?
Believe so.
All right, what you got, Barry?
Sorry, guys, I have to step out.
Thanks, Dylan.
Thank you. See you next time.
I have to leave in about 5 minutes as well to another board.
So I actually did not print this out, so you're gonna have to look at the screen. So we've got one new board member now here. So last month, we had a presentation from Ian Hunt. Actually, I think Dylan actually sat through that presentation, talking about potential terminal improvement projects. And focus being this terminal study, which becomes a prerequisite that needs to be locally funded, and that they were discussing around conducting late spring, essentially early summer, to put together a grant submittal proposal for federal funding through the bill program, bipartisan infrastructure law, 5-year, $1 billion a year funding for terminals. We are approaching the last year of that program. If successful with that grant, that project would then move forward and the study expenses could be reimbursed. If not successful, then we had lots of conversations around what that might entail. So, quick review of what happened last month. So, I've been thinking about this a lot since that meeting. I spent about an hour with Mead and Hunt yesterday discussing this with them. There are a lot of risks in moving forward as was discussed. So this is the last year of that bill terminal grant program. It's therefore likely that this will be the most competitive year for grants out of that program, because all airports have had the most time to craft their best possible proposals. And we're still in the point of getting started. Our proposal would only be based on the output of a study, not a shovel-ready proposal. Basically, shovel-ready means you've done the design, you really know what you're going to be doing, and you're looking for funding to implement. They like shovel-ready projects more than, here's a study that says what we kind of want to do, but we've got to design it X. The grant amount would have to be based on rough estimates coming out of a study. So that basically would define the project. So, we study, we think this, we haven't done any design, we don't really know what costs are going to be, but we've got now a dollar amount, and now we have to force the project to fit into that dollar amount. As we discovered last month, Mead and Hunt itself has multiple similar projects in Michigan, and we don't have a clearly better proposal than other Mead and Hunt proposals. And Mead and Hunt is one consulting firm, and this is one state. So there are going to be a lot of submittals for this year for that program.
Barry, if I remember correct, did Mead and Hunt say they had 2 or 3 others?
Yes.
And one of their 2 or 3 others really doesn't have an airport director at the helm, so they thought that one probably didn't have the capacity to apply? Am I remembering that correctly?
No, those were different
Grant.
discussions. So that airport came up in that context, but it wasn't under this program.
Okay.
If we aren't successful in getting the bill grant, knowing what I know about our pipeline of federal projects, it's going to be 8 years or more before we'll be in a position to get funding for this program. After 8 years, I question whether a study we do now will even be relevant, in which case we may have to do a study again, in which case they're not going to reimburse both and we wouldn't get reimbursed at all. So I think there's real risk of not getting reimbursed and basically just wasting money at this point. And it really all boils down to is how confident we can be in securing this grant. We've been pursuing it because there's a program and we have some needs. Let's do the best we can to get in queue for that. If we stars had aligned and this was happening 2 years ago and there were 3 years left in the grant cycles, aren't successful the first year, we learn from that, we resubmit the second year, we get back into the third year, we would have a good proposal. At this point, we're just starting that process.
For
Therefore,
clarification, you think this won't come around again for another 8
this,
particular?
I don't know if I touch on this or not. My personal opinion is this is a one-time thing. This has never happened before. This came out of Congress's desire to throw a lot of money at our economy after COVID. And given current sentiment in Washington around how they spend money in budget deficits, I don't think this is happening again in our lifetime. Now, that doesn't mean terminals don't get funded and built all the time. It just reverts to a more normal process, where we're competing with other airports and competing against our own priorities for funding of projects.
And if our ridership increases, that can be something we can, and as dollars increase in on as well. We can bank it if need be. So if we had $1.5 million or $2 million expansion, we would have those dollars, and again, increased ridership is gonna help fuel that.
We'll be spending all of those dollars for what's already in the pipeline. So when I say 8 years, I'm looking out, so the year that just transpired or just passed, we received what's known as federal discretionary dollars, which are dollars that are allocated by the FAA region-wide, nationwide, to projects based on importance and their whole rating scale. And generally an airport, once they get discretionary funding, aren't even considered for a few years because they kind of try to share those dollars around. We have in 2 years a $7 to $10 million project of our taxiway reconstruction, which will definitely require discretionary funding. So we already know we're going at that pot twice. Not even on our long-term capital improvement plan is a similar project for our north-south runway. That should have been added this year, but because the state didn't get around last year to funding their pavement inspection program, we're now going to be a year behind. But knowing the condition of that pavement, we've got a $2+ million project that will be queued up for that. Based on what we've talked about over the last few months, we need a new a new snowplow. That's $700,000 probably. We most likely will need a new fire truck because of the whole changeover from old firefighting PFAS contaminated foam to new foam. There is no approved way to clean a vehicle, so basically the recommendation is you just trash your old vehicle and buy a new one. That's how you can move to the new foam. And another thing that's not on that list is last October, we had a day where we had 3 available parking spots in our parking lot. We will be parking people on the grass this summer. Our parking lot is going to need an expansion, and that's a very real need. Back to my notes here, with Contour being limited to 30 passengers, 30 is tight for us, but it's doable. We might need to shift furniture and acquire some new furniture in our secure holding area to accommodate that. 30 is max. I anticipate we'll be averaging this summer more around 25. 25 will fit in there fairly comfortably. It's not critical with 30 passengers that we make these improvements to the terminal. Therefore, from a priority standpoint, once we start looking at all these projects, it's just going to end up being down there before we'll be able to get discretionary funding again and accomplish the things that we need to accomplish. I already talked about that study and the dollars around it probably or possibly won't be reimbursable just because the content is no longer relevant. And therefore, it's my recommendation that we don't pursue getting a grant through this state program to do this study, and that we basically postpone terminal improvements at this time, and that we basically add that into our long-term capital planning, but that it be not driven by this one-time potential bill funding opportunity. That all makes sense?
Yeah, I concur.
Totally.
So, okay?
So the new information is what, that changed the recommendation?
Well, it's,
I think last month, if I understand correctly, we wanted to do it or not?
it was brought up, and Mead and Hunt said they'd like at this board meeting a recommendation whether we wanted to pursue that option or not. In thinking about it and thinking of all of these factors that I laid out, my recommendation is that we not pursue that at this time. So, I can pass that on to Mead and Hunt.
So, one request that I would make while we're still here for our, goal setting and visioning is really a comprehensive listing of all of these projects in black and white and a timeline of when we want to do them so that this board can rank and prioritize.
In order,
Yeah, right. And what the capital requirements will be from the county so that we're not kind of doing them in a vacuum one by one as they arise in grant cycles.
And
That's part of the strategic plan that's out there as well,
Well,
but it needs to get refreshed.
yeah.
Now, at one time, we talked about TSA and needing equipment and stuff, but if I'm not mistaken, we can't do that without an expansion?
TSA has been, or threatening, but they've been saying for over a decade now that they're going to want to install a full body scanner at every airport. They say that, and then they don't have the funding to provide that equipment to all the airports, so therefore it never happens. It's not even something that's come up with them in the last couple of years. If they came to us and said, we're going to install this, where are you going to put it? That becomes an issue. We won't be the only ones that will have that issue. Every small airport has kind of squeezed TSA into their existing footprint now 20 years ago, but unless that airport has been majorly renovated, they're constrained. So that was in some ways a justification, this potential issue of, addressing it ahead of time. This would leave that as, something that, and that problem arises, then we will plan on how to address it. It is dictates like that then help force funding to free up, and, one government agency is saying, you need to do this, and then we can go to the other and say, oh, we need funding because TSA is saying we need to do this. So that's where that is. It's not a mandate. It's been something that's been discussed, and it hasn't even been discussed much recently.
Okay.
Barry, what are the chances that that capital improvement fund that you get every year from $150,000 from the government?
Well, it was 150. It should be under current law, although we haven't yet seen those dollars allocated. 600 to 700 this year, and if we hit 10,000, that will jump us up to 1.3 million.
Are we projected to hit 10,000 passengers this upcoming year? Or what do you think?
Given where Contour is, it would require 40% growth, which I think is about what I'm roughly projecting Contour can do. So I think we'll be close to that this current year that we're in, 2025, which means, given funding cycles, the following year, that would affect our funding.
I mean, that's pretty important in my opinion.
It is, but when we've got $7 to $10 million projects and $2 to $3 million projects, that money gets used up very quickly.
I understand that.
But
going from $150,000 to $1 million
yeah.
a year over time is gonna make a big difference towards those capital projects.
It allows the projects to happen more on a predictable schedule.
Right.
Whereas the environment we've been in, we plan out 10 years, and then each year is at the whim of, will we get additional funding to accomplish it? You know, when that doesn't happen, then the whole schedule gets shifted out.
Doesn't mean a $7 million project isn't gonna happen in 3 years. We'll apply for it, and again, based on what they're telling us and the need is, all those things line up, and you get the funding, and then it's just a matter of getting the 2.5% match coming from the county, which historically has not been an issue. It's not like we've gotta wait 7 years to do something if there's the need for a $7 million spend, doesn't mean it won't happen.
And technically, the most they'll let you pool together is 4 years' worth, so that would be roughly $5 million. So, but they sometimes do encourage you, well, we want you to pool together your next 4 years and not do anything else, right, so that you can do this large project that then will contribute the rest to. Those are all negotiations that happen at the state and a regional level.
Can you divide it up, projects and priorities, such as the runway, and then in 3 years, the terminal?
The FAA, manages what the priority schedule is. So we have our priority. They have a ranking based on type of project, how it ranks. But when they're comparing Manistee versus Muskegon versus Marion, Illinois, they can try to compare apples to apples.
We just
So
can't
they
take
have
the
their
money,
own
put it in
ranking.
the bank and say, okay, in 5 years, we're gonna use the terminal.
If it
3
falls,
years, the
so
runway.
if it falls within
Yeah.
our allocation, then we have a lot more control over what we spend that on. It's when we need additional funding
Right.
that those priorities then matter much more. And they definitely will say, we don't want you spending any money on anything else for 3 years, because we're gonna give this, and therefore we need what we consider the most important, be saving towards, as opposed to you spending it on things that are, in their view, lower priority.
We're
But
giving
to
you-
us, are, you know, potentially critical.
We're giving you, must spend it.
So, does that answer your questions, everybody? So then, last month, I also, mentioned this idea of submitting a air service grant under this program, for Cross Lake Air, commercial air service. For precedent's sake, I'll try to quickly review some of the things I said. Is this past year, MDOT, using the state, using ARPA funds, state legislator allocated $5 million for air service development in the 18 commercial air service airports in the state. Initially, they said EAF airports couldn't apply, then at the end, they changed their minds. Last year, 2 EAF airports applied. One of those was Houghton, and Houghton's proposal was to subsidize SkyWest to provide a third flight during their summer season, in addition to their 2 regular EAS flights. That use of those funds will be this coming summer in '25. Timing didn't allow it to happen last year. Sault Ste. Marie had a proposal of using Boutique to operate service from Sault Ste. Marie to Chicago. Their normal EAS routes are to Detroit, and recently they've gotten it switched to, it's one Detroit, one Minneapolis, and they had this trial of Chicago. What I've been told by Sault Ste. Marie is they were able to leverage that trial last year to convince SkyWest to operate an unsubsidized flight this summer to Chicago. So Sault Ste. Marie will have one Chicago, one Minneapolis, one Detroit this coming summer. So they actually utilized the results of this program to then leverage that into additional service going forward. So that's the background. This year, the state legislature allocated only $2 million funding for this, and it is likely that this will be the last time this program exists, because again, we're using excess ARPA funds that, you know, can be allocated, as opposed to general budget funds for some of these types of things. So why am I proposing that we consider this? Number one, we are very dependent on our commercial air service to justify our funding for the facilities we have. This discussion earlier about, you know, we get 10,000 enplanements, we get 1.3 million. Without that, we're at 150. And actually, right now, if we didn't have commercial air service here, we would get zero, because we don't even have enough other activity to justify getting the 150. So we are very much at the hands right now of EAS and subsidies received from it for commercial air service to then fund everything else that happens here. Our commercial air service, as it is, as you know, would not exist without EAS subsidy. You look at Contour's, you know, financial in their proposal, 80% of the cost of them operating their service here is covered by subsidy, 20% is covered by ticket prices. So for that to operate without EAS subsidy, ticket prices would either have to rise fivefold, or you'd have to start filling a lot more seats so that that cost per seat decreases.
You're talking about Contour now, not your proposal?
Contour. This is Contour. So I'm just talking about the importance that we have commercial service and how much it is dependent on EAS. So without subsidy, we wouldn't have service like we have to ORD or Detroit, because it's just not feasible without significant subsidy. To be sustainable, I already talked about this. We'd have to charge a lot higher fares. Cross-lake service, though, has some advantages, because they're very short operating routes, because you're roughly, that lake's only 80 miles, or 40 miles, 45, 50, depending on point, 60 miles wide. So you've got short hops. Generally, air service is competing with driving as the alternative. And because of the geography of Lake Michigan, that competitive advantage or disadvantage is much more significant than others. So 30-minute flight versus a 5 to 9 hour drive, depending on where you were going on the other side of the lake, is significant. And really the only existing competition is currently a 2 to 4 hour seasonal ferry ride, which also isn't necessarily cheap, averaging about $100 per person each way. So historic data suggests that there is potentially demand for this. And so I've looked, when Milwaukee had a hub with Midwest Airlines operating there, and that transition to Frontier through 2011, Muskegon and Grand Rapids both had direct flights to Milwaukee. And looking at the data, there were, approximately 30 passengers each direction, each day, that were utilizing that cross-lake service out of, Muskegon and, Grand Rapids. That all ended a decade ago.
Is it still a hub for anyone?
No, it is not.
So
But this is O&D traffic, it's not connecting traffic. So this are just people who are going back and forth, not going there to connect onto other places. From our part of the state, you know, there were still a number of passengers going, but the majority of those, because of the nonstop flights, were out of that part of the state. So the first two numbers here look at Q2 and Q3 of 2007. I chose that just because 2007 is the last year before the economic downturn in 2008, and then Midwest started basically collapsing after that. So that's really kind of the last good year of data that exists. I also then looked at last summer, at the data, and basically, so now people, if they want to go between our region and, you know, those regions in Wisconsin, they now either are connecting in Detroit, so it's a Deuce flight, you know, route, or they're connecting in Chicago, depending on the carrier. And there are still, even though it's that difficult to fly, there are still between 4 and 8 passengers each day that do that at an average fare each way of roughly $300. Then you've got the two ferries that operate seasonally, Badger and Lake Express out of Muskegon, with average fares roughly $100 each way. This proposal would be to use the subsidy to kind of stimulate demand and see if it can exist at $99 a flight across the lake.
But that's just for the summer months, correct?
Yes, this is, the proposal here is to try something to see if there is sufficient demand to, in the future, have it operate without subsidy. Use those dollars to demonstrate if there is demand. You can ask, or do you want me to continue?
Can you summarize all this and just tell us what the request is and a bottom line?
I really want to walk you through the information so that you understand the why.
I have a question, Barry. How, just given the fact that we're at 2 hours and 15 minutes, how much longer do we have ahead of us?
5 minutes.
Altogether?
8.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So we'll likely never have this chance again because this subsidy is really a one-time thing. We potentially have a unique opportunity because of our geography to try something that a typical airline, Delta, United, American, they would never do something like this with a point-to-point across Lake Michigan. This is something that would only exist outside of kind of that typical environment. A joint proposal between Muskegon and Manistee, I think, would work well based on the knowledge I have about how they're going to decide how to allocate these funds, because it shows regional collaboration. Why try this now? We have a unique opportunity so that we can do something that doesn't depend on EAS subsidy. I am very concerned that EAS may not have much of a future given the deficit hawks that are roaming the halls of Washington right now and looking for programs to cut. And I already talked about, if we didn't have EAS, we would have zero funding, but we are federally obligated for the next 20 years to be paying for $7 million projects, like maintaining runways, even though we would have no funding to do it. So this is kind of the route proposal. Green Bay, Milwaukee, Muskegon, Manistee. This is a proposed schedule that I've kind of put together that would lead to reasonable times across some wild-ass guess financials for a 10-week summer run with approximately $420,000 expenses, roughly $180,000 in revenue, requiring a subsidy of $241. What Houghton and Sault Ste. Marie last year requested and received was grants of $250,000. So potentially it fits. Next steps would be, assuming the board gives me permission to move forward with this, would be to reach out to Boutique, Cape Air, Contour, and Denver Air Connection to see if they'd be interested in partnering on something like this with Muskegon and us. Given the historic loads, I think this is ideally suited for a 9-seat aircraft, but at the same time, I want to give Contour and Denver Air, who are the incumbents at our 2 airports, the opportunity to play ball if they want to. If any carrier was interested, work through them on actual financials based on actual costs, not just guesses that I'm putting together, and then submit something along these lines to MDOT next month when those grant requests are needed. So that's what I'm talking about and looking for.
I have a couple quick questions. One, on your financial outline there, does this have a potential of being a profit center for this airport? What were you showing the airport would make off this?
In general, it is not highly profitable for the airport, other than fuel sales and other general activity.
Fair enough. 2, you look in your crystal ball and you think that EAS may be in jeopardy given the budget hawks. I think if I understand correctly, you identified that Sault Ste. Marie used this model to go to Chicago and Detroit, and demonstrated that those routes could be profitable without subsidy. Did I hear that correctly? Chicago.
So they are an EAS airport, so
Right.
they have subsidy
Where do they-
roughly along the same lines as ours, $6 million a year, that take them to Detroit. It's SkyWest, so they've already got people there, they've already got crews there, so the incremental cost for them adding a route to Chicago seasonally, they believe may be possible unsubsidized.
Okay, but they use this as a test case
They
to
use this as
try,
a test case.
what happens if we would lose our subsidy? Could we run a route unsubsidized?
No, it's unlikely that without the subsidy of EAS, that the Chicago route would still be viable, because that's basically paying all the fixed costs. So it's just the incremental cost of the extra route, because
Well-
it's SkyWest already there.
I guess where my mind was going is 2 directions. One, if EAS is potentially in jeopardy in the future, and if this is an opportunity to do a market study and a test case to see how much subsidy is needed, if any, and what is the market demand, I would look at it and say, why don't we get ourselves to an airport if 3 years from now EAS is gone? We can't renew Contour and we can't get to Chicago. Why don't we try this going to Detroit, to measure?
Because we know the cost of operating in Chicago and Detroit are roughly the same.
Oh.
So we'll need $6 million to go a long haul route with jet equipment. Basically, we don't have any service to a connecting airlines hub without EAS. We really know that already based on the cost that it requires to make what we have work. The idea here is there something else that's outside the box that lets us do something that potentially could be, sustainable without subsidy, just because of the logistics of the fact that we've got a huge body of water that people have to drive around if they have business or personal connections across this, that the regular airlines don't accommodate. Got a, you know, a route through Chicago or Detroit, and it's gonna cost you $600 to fly 80 miles.
And how much was, in terms of time, when were you proposing the start and stop service for this?
Basically, our 10 peak weeks of summer, so basically from just before 4th of July through Labor Day. Again, this is just to see if it is possible.
What's considered long haul? You mentioned Chicago or Detroit, as opposed to Milwaukee or Green Bay. Green Bay and Milwaukee isn't, I mean, it's like 190 miles to Green Bay, and what is it, air miles, 110 to Milwaukee?
Yep.
What about Flint? Somewheres where you can get something
But
that
then
gets
you're
to go.
competing against driving again. So.
Right, the
what
drive
makes-
time is.
What makes this potentially unique, and what makes it possible that there are 2 ferries that operate seasonally and charge $100, they're gonna carry a lot more people than, you know, we would through, you know, a 9-seat aircraft.
I guess
But
my
it's
thought,
just-
yeah, I guess my thought at the moment, and I wasn't for this, but at the moment, I would say, if it's going to improve our status and stature, anything we can do to increase ridership is a positive, as opposed to,
When would this take effect, Barry?
I hope that everything will align for doing it this summer. I mean, Sault Ste. Marie was
The added
going,
route that we're talking about.
yes.
Yes.
Sault Ste. Marie went through this process last year, and they had service in the summer with Boutique.
Personally, I think it's a lot of work as we're going through this summer, a transition of a director, bringing a new director on, getting his sea legs on in July, August, September. I don't know, maybe it's done by Labor Day
Yeah,
and
once
the
it's all
director
in
isn't
place.
even here.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever.
What Jeff said is really my opinion, is that we've got a one-time funding opportunity to do something that brings an increased level of activity to this airport. And if we don't do it now, this will never happen.
That logic, we could apply for a one-time grant for a terminal for several $1 million that we don't want to apply for.
But that one is based on this one's a lot shorter
This is
process
state,
than that.
too.
You don't have a $70,000 outlay to get it.
Do you need to stay for a vote? Are we voting on this?
Sure, if you wanna, if
I
you
mean, I'm
want.
just wondering,
I need direction,
Kind of
if
petering
I
out.
should
Yeah, I hear you.
go and submit this, or, I mean,
If
there
you got
wouldn't
the
be
time,
any
I'd give it a thumbs
obligation
up.
until a grant came back, but I really want to make sure there's buy-in, because it is gonna take time, and I realize that. This is something I personally am passionate about, because I think I'd really like to do something that Traverse City doesn't do. And this is something very unique, and
Cindy, do you have any thoughts to share with us before you go on your opinion on this?
Well, I think, I mean, if this is a one-time thing, and we probably should take that shot, just to see how it goes. I mean, it can't hurt, right?
to Adam's point, where it potentially could hurt is it takes away resources from other things that we should be focusing on as well.
Oh, yeah.
But to add a city like that, and I think, or add cities,
I mean, we're keeping our normal schedule, we have
Right,
contours.
right.
This is
Yep.
it's
additional,
addition,
so,
gives people more options in the summer months, it's, yeah.
I'm for it.
Okay, I think you have your direction.
Okay?
Good luck.
all right. I'm gonna get
Thanks,
going,
Cindy.
everybody, I'm
Thanks
sorry.
for coming.
Okay.
All right, see ya.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the state air grant application, Barry,
Yes.
number 9? Okay, 10, schedule.
We already
Address
did
that? Great.
So board training, we already talked about and scheduled that. Boiler repairs. So as someone mentioned, coming in, that we've got heated sidewalks. Those are driven by a pair of boilers. that were installed when this terminal was built, so they're now approximately 15 years old. And one of them has failed. Basically, it got a internal water leak, which basically fried the internal circuitry board. It's dead. The other one, they say, well, it's probably on its last legs. They drive that sidewalk heat. Now, it's a slab out there, there's a slab at that entrance, and there's a slab, there are two more slabs, so it's doing a little bit. It also is our backup heat supply. So this terminal has a radiant loop in the floors, which generally isn't used because we have a geothermal HVAC system that is generally doing our heat. So Custom Sheet Metal, who does all of our HVAC work, came out here, evaluated, said that's really dead, and this one's on its last legs, and it's given me a quote for replacing them that's, depending on which options, is between $34,000 and $40,000. Obviously, that's not something that falls within our budget. As we just went through kind of a fire drill recently with a plow truck. I would say that we need to go get multiple bids.
Great.
For something like this, and we can bring it back. But we could also potentially say, turn off the sidewalk heat and shut those boilers down.
That's all it does is a sidewalk?
And it's the
Oh,
backup
and a backup for the.
if
Okay.
if the geothermal circulating went out.
Got it.
So, a lot of money for a rather short convenience and a backup. But, I'm just giving you a heads up on that. If Lisa was whispering behind me, I think we need to go out for bids, and then we can make those decisions.
You have some other contractors that you can call for other?
Yes, I can do that. It's just, you know,
First Mechanical is someone we use a lot.
so, but this just happened late last week, so, and actually I got the quote yesterday, so that's the latest on that. So that takes us through new business. My report, I'll go through this because a lot of this we've already discussed. No airport accidents and incidents. Sheriff's boat, any update on that?
We're working on the hangars, we're working on,
Building.
Is there an ETA? And part of the reason is that we're currently not in compliance with our federal grant assurances. And one of the people who's on the waiting list pointed that out to us, and they could make a stink about this if they wanted to. So just mentioning that. We do also have Ted Aaron's storage that is in one AT hangar, and that was basically agreed to provide him that in exchange for him donating his hangar. So I think we can actually argue that that's a justifiable use of that hangar, given what we've received in benefit. Contour, in my conversation with Matt last week, is now, I think, likely to rent the old Cape Air hangar, so I think we will have a tenant for that. And we do also have two hangars with non-airworthy aircraft, one being the ultralight from the accident late summer, and the other being an aircraft that hasn't flown in 15 years. So they're technically occupied, but they're not necessarily occupied by aircraft that are functional.
so they're being paid by,
But they're, I assume, I mean, I don't see that, but I know Susan sends out monthly invoices.
no,
so.
that, yeah, okay.
Well, do we have a lease agreement with people for it?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
I don't know
wondered
if people pay or not, I don't see that.
That wasn't, I didn't ask that how I intended.
That's fine.
I just meant,
I know
like,
what you meant.
those are
Billable,
Yeah,
correct,
they're
yes.
getting paid.
yes. So, snowplow repairs are completed, that is fully functional.
Did we, on the hangars, you know, one thing we were gonna do, or I think we asked, was to call Muskegon and.
I reported on all that last month with the comparative rates, that was in last month's report.
Okay, I missed it, my apologies. How are we? Are we high, low?
We're kind of middle of the road. There are higher and there are lower.
Okay, so we only asked for two and we're above one and below the other?
I think we've got Cadillac and Ludington.
That's fine.
Yeah. And it depends on the type of hangar too, because it's somewhat apples to oranges.
George, will you, put those buildings under your,
I was already thinking this when we talked about that earlier.
assessment of, you know, what's going on?
Yeah, like.
That's your world, please. Thank you.
GSA lease for the TSA space, they're reworking the lease so that it is in the authority's name, not the county's name, because the authority owns the building, not the county, so that's still just hanging out there. Already know that we 9 passengers short, but our numbers for Contour for December were very good. I didn't have November numbers last month. They were also above Cape Air, kind of a smaller increase. The big difference is that in Cape Air in December last year, they were constrained by only doing 2 flights a day. Load factors, they were basically full. So we basically opened up demand with more capacity. That was our goal, this whole EAS cycle. December, Contour canceled 8% and was delayed 38%. Matt gave a number that was a little more optimistic with that, but that was only through November. They're struggling getting out in the mornings, especially on time with de-icing. This morning they were 2 hours late. That's fairly typical right now. Airfares, not much change, so I'm not even gonna go into that anymore. Run out of time. Projects update, I had an interaction with MDOT last week and asked them when we can expect to see our contracts for all the projects that we're waiting on. And they answered by telling me all the reasons we don't have our contracts, but did not give me a date. So both I and Mead and Hunt are unhappy right now. In fact, Mead and Hunt is having a meeting tomorrow with the head of MDOT Aeronautics to complain about their staff not getting things out in any sense of time. I mean, we still have this thing that's 4 years outstanding that we're still waiting on things from MDOT on.
Well, there again, they haven't been in the office in God knows how many years now. That's a true statement.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm not gonna comment on that. We already discussed the terminal stuff. This is everything with Contour. There's nothing here that's new, although I will point out, in January, I'm anticipating a 60% increase in enplanements versus Cape Air a year ago. We're currently about 40% up. One other thing is Contour finally got their summer schedule released very end of December. So they now have availability through September. And I had requested that they make a change from the current schedule when they extended it, and they incorporated that change, which is on Sundays, we will have a 5 p.m. departure instead of a 1 p.m. departure.
That's nice.
Which for people who are coming up here for the weekend or who are leaving on Sunday to start a business, leaving at 1 as your latest option didn't make sense, so they have fixed that. So I'm very pleased with how the schedule looks for summer with that change. And then marketing is going on, and I've got my next monthly meeting with Contour Marketing week. So that's all I have. Any questions?
What was the rent Cape Air paid for that hangar?
I think we're 1,100, and I don't remember if we raised that for this year,
Yeah.
or not. So it might be 1,200 or 11 something, but it's around 1,100 a month.
It would seem to me if he could keep his equipment in a heated spot, he'd get the things going a lot quicker in the morning.
They're already using it
Oh, are they?
for their belt loader particularly, because it doesn't even have, hot plugs.
Cold plugs?
Cold plugs. So it won't start if it's left outside, so they're. Back to you.
Public comment? Is there any? Lisa?
Going back to your appointment of your officers, do you have to do a formal, if Lindsay's going to be acting secretary?
Oh, yes.
I just
we-
thought about that.
Thanks, Lisa. Why don't we?
Yeah, because we always have had an acting secretary.
So,
Well, actually, a recording secretary.
Recording.
what action do we need to take? A motion and a second on that? Okay. Is there, yeah, and luckily we still have a quorum.
Yep.
Is there a
I'll
motion?
make a motion to, appoint Lindsay as our recording secretary.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call? You want a roll call, Lisa?
Roll call, yeah, appointment,
All right.
yeah.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Adam Downs?
Yes.
Mr. Jeff Downs?
Yes.
Steve Cardy?
Okay. Could, Lisa and Lindsay, could we have, the benefit of our recording secretary at our goal-setting workshop, so we have some notes, going forward, and that's memorialized? What I've found in a lot of our committee meetings is we say, what happened at the last meeting, and
Well, if Lindsay, we'll have to look at our schedule in the office,
I am-
because that takes her out.
I'm respectful of that. Sure.
Possibly could do it, that was the February meeting, right?
Yep. Okay,
Part of it.
thank you. Okay, anything from anyone else? Okay, adjourn? Meeting's adjourned.
Let me know when you got it off.